Thank you, Bruno. This is, I have to say, I'm saying this to everybody else, this is a wonderful conference. They just have done a fabulous job of all the details. Is this mic on? Hello? Yes? Better? Yeah. There we are. Now I can hear it. Okay. I had a problem once with a lavalier microphone that it was picking up my heartbeat. And no matter what we did, we couldn't get it to stop picking up my heartbeat. I don't agree with my lavalier microphones. I love them, but they don't work for me. So. All right. So my presentation is going to be a little different. It's not completely different, as Monty Python would say, but it's a little different in that I do short books, and I'm going to do a short talk. I want to do 20 minutes of slides and take 20 minutes of questions. So I hope you have plenty of questions when I'm done. The questions can be about anything, and as I like to say in the workshop, except for that brief period in the late 70s, which I don't want to talk about. The title of my presentation today talks about a lazy man's guide, and the truth is I am lazy. I am very lazy, as my wife and anyone who knows me will attest. I could, in fact, no one believes this, but I could very happily spend 8 hours a day watching reruns of Law & Order. Which in the United States is entirely possible because Law & Order reruns are on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have this theory that Law & Order is kind of like the way the British Empire used to be. The sun never sets on Law & Order. Somewhere in the world, Law & Order is playing. So, but this presentation is not actually about being lazy, because I know you're not all lazy, just me. It's about being effective. And I'm trying to convince you that you don't have to do quite as much as you may think when it comes to fixing usability problems. Okay? And so I spent all of last year writing a book about finding and fixing usability problems. It's a book, it's a do-it-yourself book. So it's meant to be for everyone who's working on a website, because I do believe, as Jacob said this morning, that there aren't enough usability professionals to go around for the umpteen billion websites, all of which could use some usability testing. And so I really have come to believe over the last couple of years that everyone should be capable of doing their own simple usability testing, because usability testing is the easiest way to make a site better. And I believe that everyone's capable of doing it. So that's why I spent a year writing the book. Now this talk today is about a few things that I learned while I was writing the book. Oh, I forgot to tell my iPhone to stay awake so I can see the timer so I know when I'm nearing 20 minutes. All right, show of hands. Have you ever gone to a website, probably a website from a large company that clearly has a good deal of money, and run into a serious usability problem? Show of hands. That's a majority, I'd say. All right. Since you are in this profession, did you find yourself thinking, how is it that this problem still exists? Did they not notice this? Did they not think it was worth fixing? I mean, did that go through your thought? You're like puzzled why this. It's not Bob's Pizzeria. This is like Target or some very large company that has this problem. So clearly they have the resources to fix things. Did you also have the experience of going back months later and finding that the same problem was still there, had not been fixed? Yeah, okay. I think this is not an unusual experience. I'm going to try and tell you how I think that happens and how to avoid it in your own situation. Usability. Now, see, as anyone who has ever hosted me at giving a talk will tell you, I believe in just-in-time PowerPoint. So I'm the person who's always sitting in the back typing while they're introducing me from the podium. So I apologize for the typos. But I find it works better for me that way. So if you've done any usability testing, you know that usability testing just works. It works very well. It uncovers a lot of usability problems very quickly. And in fact, in my book, I recommend that people only test three users in each round of testing, because I tend to believe that by the time you get through 3 users, you have seen so many usability problems that you don't really need more at that point. I recommend that you do that every month, or if you're doing Agile or something, more frequently than every month, more often with fewer people. So I think that usability testing is just wonderful. I love doing usability tests. I love watching usability tests because they almost always succeed. But I finally realized that this success is part of the problem, that it takes far less resources to find these problems because they're so easy to find than it does to fix them. So, you can find more in a morning with 3 users than you can generally fix in a month. So here's a diagram. You can find this vast amount of problems from just a few users. And in general, almost everyone, even if they're a large company for various reasons, don't necessarily have the resources allocated to fix all of those problems. So your site is always going to have usability problems. Your site is always going to have usability problems. Get over it. Okay? Do not let this keep you awake at night. What you want to be sure of is that your site does not have serious, crippling usability problems. Okay? If you can take care of the serious problems, you're doing an excellent job. So, one of the reasons why I think this happens, that these problems persist, and this comes from working with clients and over the years, is that it's very easy to fix the easy problems first. Okay, that's very tempting. If you test 8 users and you come away with pages and pages and pages and pages of notes and pages and pages and pages of catalogs of problems, it's very easy to get seduced into saying, well, we'll just start fixing a whole bunch of this, okay, without particularly prioritizing it. You make some attempt at prioritizing, but it's just so tempting to go in and fix the simple things first. And the end result of this is that often the most serious usability problems remain for a long time. They don't get fixed. So I'm going to try and convince you to do 2 things, and if you are lazy like me, you'll find these welcome suggestions. Okay, these 2 suggestions come from 2 of the 6 maxims. I have 6 maxims. I only have 3 laws or whatever in the first book. I have 6 maxims in the second book. Focus ruthlessly on a small number of the most important problems. When you've done your test and you've observed problems, from that point on, you want to focus on a small number of the most important problems. Particularly because, as I said, it's easy not to. It's easy to get tempted to fixing the simple things. It's also difficult to focus on fixing the hard things because the serious problems are often, they are not because you aren't aware of them and not because you don't realize, even before you did the testing, that there were problems, but because you really don't know how to fix them. I mean, that's why they're there, because they're thorny problems. You do not have a simple solution for them. Okay, and your entire organization may be well aware that this problem exists, but they've sort of come to the conclusion that we don't know what to do about it, and so we'll have to live with it for now. Obviously, fixing the simple ones is easier. When you've got these serious problems that you don't quite know how to fix, it's very tempting to think, we'll be fixing them eventually. Okay? When we do our next major redesign, we'll be using a completely different database, we'll be using a completely different business model, and these problems will go away. So what's the point of putting the effort into trying to fix them now when we know that when this fabulous new version comes out next year or the year after or whenever it comes out, that those problems will not exist? There's also, because of that, because you're going to be doing this wonderful utopian redesign at some point, you hate the idea that trying to fix it now would be a duplication of effort. The next version. However, the problem is that your users will continue to suffer from these problems and, in fact, not convert on your site or not buy your books or not look up their information or value your company because they will continue to run into these serious problems in the meantime until utopia shows up. So Bruno was kind enough, I wanted to make sure that everyone was clear on what I meant by ruthlessly. Bruno was kind enough to give me a translation in Piado's mint. I apologize, but that's as close as I can come at the moment. It means sort of to the exclusion of all the other problems. Narrow focus, very narrow focus on the most serious problems. This process of focusing narrowly starts with the observers while the testing is going on. You want to tell the observers, you want to give them instructions, and I actually have a page of instructions. There's a lot of stuff you can download from my website. You don't have to buy the book. I shouldn't say that, but you don't have to buy the book. You can download the instructions for observers is one page. It's on my website, as is the script. My usability test script is on my website. A sample chapter from the new book. Also, the video. I would encourage you. I did create a 40-minute video that shows how I think you should do a do-it-yourself web usability test. Sorry, not enough coffee. And that's available freely. It's, in fact, if you search for Steve Krug on YouTube, you'll probably find it. If you go to my publisher's site, New Riders, you can find it there. So I would encourage you to watch that video. And I skipped. So the instruction to observers that's going to keep them focused is after each session, in the 15 minutes or whatever period you have between test sessions, the observers are encouraged, they're not encouraged, they're threatened, they're told in no uncertain terms, that they should write down the 3 most serious problems that they observed in the session they just watched. And here's the sheet that you can also get this on the site, not that you need it, but this is the sheet that I give to them, which has 3 lines for each participant. So it's fairly clear what they should do. And this is the sheet that they're going to take into the debriefing. So they can bring along their pages and pages of notes about everything they saw. But really the only thing that counts that they're going to bring into the debriefing is a sheet with, if you tested 3 users, with the 9 most serious problems that they observed. All right. Then the debriefing, I recommend that you do the debriefing right after the test. So my kind of standard recommendation is 1 morning a month, bring in 3 participants and test them in the morning. Then over lunch, everyone who came to the test and observed has lunch together and debriefs and decides what's going to be fixed in the next month, what the most serious usability problems are, and how they're going to be fixed in the next month. Obviously, you may not be able to get participants to come in the morning for certain types of participants. You could do it in the evening and debrief over dinner, whatever. But you want to do it right after the test sessions. You don't want to do it 2 days later or 3 days later when people have forgotten the things that they saw. The objective of the debriefing is to decide what serious problems you're going to be able to fix before the next round of testing. Okay, which of the most serious problems you are going to commit to fixing. Just checking the time again. Okay, good. We're doing fine. In the debriefing, basically everyone has their sheet with their 9 problems that they thought were most serious. You go around the room and you gather the problems. Everyone contributes from the list of 9. You write the problems on easel pads and put them up at the wall as you fill each sheet. And you leave some space between each one because as you go along, many people are going to notice the same problem, and sometimes they'll have a little modification or clarification or improvement on the original description or a little something to add, so leave a little space between them. You will often find that some people will look at their list and they'll say, yeah, I also had, out of my 9, 8 of them are already up there and I have this one. So that's fine. You want to treat all contributions with respect, obviously. You don't want to belittle any suggestion that anybody makes, or no one is allowed to say, oh, I don't think that's a serious problem. Certainly not at this point. You're not discussing these things. You're just gathering what people thought were the most serious problems. And the other thing is you need to make people stick to observed problems. So they can't throw in things that they realize while they were watching a test is a problem, but it's not a problem that any of the participants had. Okay? You don't want them to be making things up. The rest of the debriefing, then you're going to decide, you've got all these sheets up on the wall with all the problems that everyone thought were important. There'll be a lot of overlap in general. And then you're going to decide which ones are the most serious. Now, I say some magic happens here. There are many ways to do this. Okay? You could have a vote to say, okay, who thinks, this one is one of the top 10 most serious. You could have a dictatorship, which I actually highly recommend. I recommend that the person who is the usability person, the person who's most interested in usability in this particular part of the organization, actually runs this debriefing meeting with a fairly firm hand and exercises as much clout as is politically possible within your context. Or you can have a hybrid where you really, you do voting and then the person who's running the meeting tries to sway the outcome. You may say, well, this is going to be hard. It's going to be very complicated and argumentative for people to figure out which ones are the most important. I find that it's not. It would be hard if you were just asking people, not having sat through usability tests, what do you think are the most serious usability problems? But if all the people in the room have just observed the same 3 usability tests, there's going to be a great deal of overlap. in what they observed as serious problems. So one of the reasons why you want to get as many people as possible on the team, and stakeholders, and management, and whoever, to come and observe the tests. Then, having decided which ones are important, you're going to number them. As number 1 is the most serious, we think is the most serious problem. Number 2 is the next most serious. And you can go down to 10 or 12, or you'll kind of get the hang of it. You don't have to number all of them, obviously. And then you're going to copy that numbered list of the top 10, say, onto a fresh sheet of paper with space in between them. Then you're going to decide how roughly. You're not going to be able to decide in detail, because sometimes it will amount to, well, somebody has to try fixing this, or somebody has to research some question about how to fix this. But you're going to start at the top of the list and come up with a rough idea of what you're going to do to fix this problem. Okay? And what resources that's going to require. So is that going to take a programmer, a week and a half of his time? Or is it going to take a designer and a programmer a day? Or, for each problem, you figure out roughly how you think you're going to fix it, which we'll talk more about in a minute, and what resources that's going to require. You start with number 1, and you work your way down the list without skipping it, coming up with a rough idea of how you're going to fix them and what it's going to take. And then, when you've allocated the resources that you think you reasonably are going to be able to expend on fixing usability problems that month, which is not very much, take my word for it, you're not going to spend a lot of resources on fixing usability problems, you stop. You say, okay, that's what we can, right here at number 6, that's what we can commit to fixing this month. And we have decided that we're fixing, and by the end of this month, we will have fixed the 6 most serious usability problems that we observed during these sessions today. Okay, and that's a commitment. Then, this part is optional. If you want to be dramatic about it, fold up the rest of the list and rip it off. Okay, crumple it up and throw it in the wastebasket. As a sign, as Susan suggested this the other day, as a dramatic gesture to indicate that these are the ones that you've committed to fixing, and you're forgetting about the rest of them for now. Okay. There is an exception, which I'll get to later, but all right. And the second point here, which is shorter, and because we're almost on to questions, is about how you fix the problems. What's the best way to think about fixing the problems? And I have concluded that you always want to try and think of the least you can do to fix the problem that you observed. Okay? Which basically means try tweaking instead of redesigning. Right? It's very tempting to start to think about redesigning. You've just watched a bunch of people have problems with your site, and you start thinking, oh, it would be so much better if our navigation was horizontal instead of vertical, and it would be so much better if this and that. It's very easy to get sucked into, believe me, you get sucked into thinking in terms of redesigning. But it's the wrong thing to do. You'll see someone have trouble with the menu, and you'll start thinking, well, we should redo our navigation. Because you also think of many other things that you could fix at the same time, if you did redo the navigation. The problem is, you won't do it. The problem is that's not going to fix the problem right now. What you want to do instead is to tweak, to find the smallest change you can make right now that will eliminate that problem as a serious problem for most people. Now that doesn't mean the perfect fix. It doesn't mean, see the difference here between a quick fix and a permanent fix. Doing it right, doing it perfectly means you're going to come up with a solution such that almost no one will experience the problem. The problem will have gone away for everybody. But that may require a lot of work, and it may take weeks or months or longer. Whereas the quick fix means a lot fewer people will experience that problem, and the ones who do will not experience it as serious a problem. And that's the kind of thing that you can often do in a few days, okay, with some simple fix. And here's a flowchart from the book, an approach to tweaking, which basically says, so you've got the problem, and you think about what's the simplest change we can make that we think might fix it. Then you try making that change, since it's fairly simple, you try making it, and say, did it fix the problem? Now you probably don't even have to retest to decide whether it actually fixed the problem. Probably just by implementing the fix and looking at it, you'll have a real clear sense of course, based on what we observed, this new way is much better. This menu item is properly named, and so people will no longer have that problem. Okay? And if it fixed it, then you need to check on the right here and make sure you didn't break anything else while you were doing it, and then you're done. Okay? If your sense is it didn't fix it, then you have to ask yourself, well, did it not fix it just because we didn't make the tweak big enough? Could we maybe make that type a little larger again? You know? And if you think that's possible, then you try what I call a louder tweak. So you just make the same tweak, only with more emphasis, and decide whether it didn't fix the problem. If that doesn't work, then you have to try a different tweak. Okay? Before you move on to redesign. Don't move on to redesign until you've tried several tweaks. And finally, here, I think this is finally, is a list from the book of 9 reasons why tweaking is better than redesigning. Tweaks obviously do cost less, require less work. Right. Elizabeth Bale, who works with me, sometimes loved this one. This is her favorite. They don't ruin lives, break up families, and wreck careers. You can make the changes sooner. Very important is they're more likely to actually happen. How many redesigns have you been involved in that ended up not happening on time, or not happening at all? You know, it's true. If you make larger changes, as we just mentioned, you're more likely to break things that were working. People don't like change, and so redesigns tend to annoy them. A certain percentage of people. Complexities and risks, and redesign means involving a lot of people in a lot of meetings. So but it's number 9 by itself is enough reason to avoid redesigns. So to sum up, do less, be happy. Would be my suggestion. And so now we'll move on to questions. Am I supposed to move over here for questions? Is that the idea? Okay. So that you can replace the computer. So who have we got? Are we passing a microphone around? Is that how it works? Yes, sure. And please be thinking of questions. I want a lot of questions. We have time to fill.
Hi, Steve.
Yes.
My colleagues, while I'm here enjoying myself in Lisbon, my colleague is doing user testing right now this week back at where we work. And our boss absolutely does not want to do a few short tests, find some serious problems, fix them, move on, do some more testing, etc. He wants to test with everybody we can find.
He wants to spend a lot of money. He has excess budget he has to get rid of.
I don't know the reasons. So at the end of Don't Make Me Think, you had these very useful sort of template letters, slightly humorous.
To the boss. Yes, letters to the boss.
How can I approach this? How can I convince him? I'm spending months trying to convince him.
Well, and he's not concerned about spending all that money. Do you understand his motivation? What do you understand about his motivation?
I don't understand his motivation.
He's a mystery.
He says he doesn't want to do it.
Has he seen any usability tests? Has he observed usability tests?
I don't think he's seen the ones we're doing. He says he has. He's aware of them.
He's aware of them. And how much leverage do you have? That's the important question.
I don't know. I mean, he's my boss.
He's your boss,
yeah. Probably not a lot.
I don't know. The only recommendation I have for fixing the boss in general is to get the boss to come and watch some simple discount usability tests. Because usually, no matter what you may think, the boss usually is not stupid. But many bosses are not stupid. And so once they see that this simple method produces a lot of valuable information and a lot of results, they usually get enthused about it. I'm baffled as to why it's not the usual case. The usual case is somebody doesn't want to do any testing, right? It's not that they want to do massive testing and spend a lot of money on it. It's supposed to be a simple testing. So I'm a little baffled with that one. There is an excellent book called Return on Investment for Randolph Bias. It's by Randolph Bias, and it has ROI in the title. So Return on Investment for Usability Testing, maybe. Excellent book, a lot of articles about people, a lot of case studies. So you can take a look at that if you want to try and make the case.
Okay.
But I usually don't try and make the return on investment case, partly because my heart isn't in it. I tend to think that unless the boss is going to really get religion by watching a couple of tests and saying, this is great, we should be doing this, Also, I'm not capable of making a return on investment argument because I don't have a business head at all. So, somebody else? Here.
Steve, how does this method change when you are the only person doing the testing? So you don't have a group of observers, you're the only one,
yes.
So there's not multiple lists. Does it change any? And if so, how?
It changes some. It changes some in that I'm disappointed because one of my 6 maxims is make it a team sport because it's so valuable to have other people watching the test. Having them watching the test versus you conveying the results to them is a factor of. It's like about the earthquake scale. It's exponentially less valuable. So try and get people in the room to observe if at all possible. But the pragmatic differences are you probably want to be sure that you have something like Camtasia, a screen recorder running, so that you don't feel compelled to take as many notes. Although you won't go back and watch the Camtasia recording, but it will give you the comfort of feeling like you will be less anxious because you know that there's a record. You'll take a few more notes. You'll take some more notes while it's going on. And as you get more experience, you can take a lot of notes and still pay full attention to the participant. But when you're first starting out, don't try and take when you're first starting out, don't try and take notes. The only notes you want to take when you're first starting out are a few small notes about things that you want to go back at the end of the test and probe with them. Like you want to say, didn't see, free car offer. So that you remember at the end to go back and take them to the page with the free car offer and find out why they didn't see it. But other than that, I'm sorry, I'm making you crazy, aren't I? I forgot you were recording. Okay. So yeah, you can do it fine. It's mostly a matter of experience. If you've done several rounds of them, then you're fine doing them by yourself. But again, I would encourage everyone, as much as possible, get anyone you possibly can to come and watch. That's why, if you're going to spend money on anything, when you're doing usability testing, spend it on snacks. Food. The most attractive food you can think of. Okay? Put it in the observation room. All right? And there was somebody over here who had a question. Right? Yes?
Well, thank you for the insight on tweaking your boss. That was quite valuable. But in fact, in our organization, sometimes we really don't have any time for usability testing.
Yes.
If you work in a news organization or in this kind of things that happened yesterday and you have to have a site ready in 2 hours, sometimes you really don't have any time.
Right.
How do you solve that?
One way is cubicle testing. They probably don't go cubicle. They actually don't call them cubicle in the UK. I found out last month. Go to the person at the next desk from you when you've sketched the thing up or put it together. Go to the person at the next desk and say, "Do you have 2 minutes? Please try using this and think out loud while you're doing it." 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That's it. Okay, and you will in those 2 minutes. Even though that person knows a lot about what about your site and what you design, you will probably uncover, if you've got really serious usability problems, they will probably uncover them. You just can't do it yourself. You're too close to it. You can't do it yourself. But if you have that kind of time constraint, then don't not do it. Instead, do it really quickly and do it with whoever you can find. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Somebody back there.
Thanks, Steve. I'm very glad to hear your talk because I'm also very lazy. I do also believe that sometimes kind of less effort leads to more kind of quality output in design terms. But as a consultant, I find that often people have paid money and they feel that for this money they should see evidence of lots of effort.
Yes.
And I have a very hard time trying to persuade people that actually me not appearing to do a great deal is actually providing a better return on investment, and I kind of wonder what tips you might have.
Is there testing? Well, hang on to the mic for a minute, because is there testing involved in what you're doing?
Yes.
There is. Okay, and have they watched the tests, or are they just paying for the tests?
They watch them, not always live.
Not always live. Would they watch tapes?
No, I think they just like to own the tapes.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say, nobody watches tapes. how can you charge the same amount for doing less? I don't know. I don't have a good answer other than to appeal to. I mean, you could make them buy a copy of my new book, which basically says you don't have to do that, and that you're sort of wasting your time doing it. Other than that, I don't have a great, and I don't say that to sell a book. I don't have another. Yes, up here. How are we doing in time, Bruno?
Just one more question.
One more question?
So, the question is about if you're doing something new from scratch. When would you recommend to start doing this?
A couple of weeks ago.
Before you started, or before you
Yes,
finished?
one of the maxims in the book is start testing earlier than you think makes sense. Okay, it's never too early to start testing.
The initial concept.
One of the best things that people forget to do is competitive sites or comparable sites, sites that are like what you're doing. Okay, you can do usability tests on those before you even sketch anything.
Similar sites. Right?
Similar sites, exactly. You can. What I like to say is that these people have gone to the trouble of building a full-scale working prototype of a different design treatment of exactly what you're going to do, and left it lying around for you to use. So there's no law against doing usability testing on somebody else's site, and you can learn an enormous amount just by watching a few people use these sites about what works and what doesn't work. That can then save you. And then as soon as you start having sketches, you start testing the sketches, and as soon as you start wireframes, you start testing wireframes.
Thanks.
Thank you. Is that it? Are we done?
Yeah.
One. Oh, no, we're done.
Steve?
I'm sorry, I don't know who does something.
No, we're done.
Here.
We're done. Yeah.
Sorry.
We're done. We have to keep moving. So, but thank you very much. Very much.